for joining myself and Ryan. I'm here in the amazing Lincoln, warmer environment than earlier. Look, I love coming down or up to different locations. Ryan, rather than me rattle on, in 30 seconds, some people may have never seen you before. So, you're a developer, you're an investor, you're an award-winning investor. I did say to Ryan, should we show the award? No. So when was that award, Ryan? 2016?
2016, that was the award, yes. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a crazy cat man. Physio by trade, property, Betfair trader as well, which led me sort of into property. And yeah, it's been a crazy ride over the last sort of 6 years. I've been in property now, 7 years.
7 years. So, look, in terms of strategies and so forth, it's important to be an award winner. I noticed last night that the architect, I say my architect, he's not my architect, he's Martin Skinner's architect.
Yep.
Matt Cartwright, he's, I think, been nominated for another award. I've won so many awards, I was going to add that to the profile for the summit. And I got a little bit tired because they've won so many awards in the last year. Matt Cartwright, who was introduced to me through Martin, so huge thanks, Martin. Just going back, so the 2016 winning the award, so then you come onto my agenda because I see your name there winning the award, and for me it makes a huge difference as well. It's recognition, and I've also spoken to some of the people. Let me just move the video slightly. I've spoken to some of the people who are judges, maybe not at your time, but in 2017, and of course it's confidential exactly what they said, but it wasn't too exclusive. It was just interesting how much due diligence they did on the day.
Yep.
It's not literally the judges are there, I understand, for most of the day.
Yeah, full day.
Yeah, so I have to admit, maybe beforehand I thought it was literally an hour, 2 hours, but it's a lot more detailed than that.
And it's also
more detailed for that
and then on the day that they're there as well, they ring you up as well if they've got any extra questions, and just to sort of check in with you, see what is happening and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you get a random phone call on the day.
It's almost like who wants to be a millionaire. That's the way I see it. So that's interesting. So how's it changed? Made you recognised in London, gave you featured press as well. So going forward in the journey, of course, it's important to keep the momentum as well. And,
yeah.
I'm in your office right now, and I'm seeing about 10 books. I have to admit, some of them I've not seen before. I have to admit, and some of them I've seen many times.
Yep.
You prefer reading rather than listening to Audible, is it, or mixture?
Yeah, I prefer to actually read the book than listen on Audible. When I listen to sort of audio like that, it's mainly podcasts.
You've got your own podcast as well.
Got my own podcast. Thank you very much.
And you had a look. I listen to everyone in terms of podcasts. The likes of Tim Ferriss, for example, but JLD, Entrepreneurs on Fire, as well. So I've done a number of interviews. I'm always listening to how people interview. Don't always pick up the right information because you've all got your own different styles as well. Why do you prefer reading traditional method rather than the Audible method? And it's wrong for me to use a brand name Audible because I'm sure there's other platforms.
Others are available. For me, it's just I prefer to actually sit and read the book and take it in, and then I make notes as well. So I use Evernote to make notes, and I highlight things in the book. So like Tools for Titans, for example, that I'm halfway through. It's a monster book. I prefer to actually just read it so I can write notes on it. I can't do that with Audible.
I have to admit, Tim won't be happy with me, but Tim doesn't really know me, I don't think, anyway. Tools of Titans, I found a really tricky book, so I listened to Tim, I love his podcast, but I have to admit, it wasn't quite for me, because it's a hard read, that one.
It is a tough read, and there's a lot in there that doesn't it's you're not interested in all of it because you've got a health bit and loads of different bits. But I think you take from it. It's like anything, any kind of content, any kind of book, podcast, anything. You take from it what you want to get from it, and then that can improve.
So look, Mike Stenhouse was one of the original podcasters in property. I say original because there's, how far back do we go? There's, I think, Rob Dix as well. I don't really know Rob. I know Mike because he's presented for me. Where does your little spot or your big spot? Where's that gap in the market? Which Mike how does it follow? You interviewed Brad last week. So why another podcast? Because you must have a reason for creating a podcast. Yeah, and that's part of your strategy, I take it, as well.
Yeah, part of my strategy to build my brand is to use a podcast. One of my strengths isn't typing content. I can type content, but my grammar isn't the best in the world. And yes, I can get someone in to do it and all these kind of things. But
I personally think, maybe I've been listening to too many podcasts, but that's maybe still it's going to be a textual fashion for some people, but we are certainly moving on to videos or audio. Some people say it's a renaissance of podcast right now.
Yeah, I think podcasts are very popular, but it allows me to showcase my skills. I can speak to other people, and I always say on the podcast that they're more for me than anyone else anyway, because I get to have conversations with people and ask them questions one-on-one. So it's like when you do an interview, you've got my attention now for the duration of this video. You can ask me whatever you want, and I'm going to answer that. So I'm going to impart some value or wisdom. Now, by me doing that, I pick up a lot of information from some really good people, but I also get a chance to showcase to their audience some of my skills, so they get to see who I am, and they can then follow up with me.
Look, I'm slightly distracted in this interview by the books there. I like the one, How to Predict the Unpredictable. I've not heard of that one before. And the other one below it is the Marshmallow Test.
Yeah, so a lot of the books that I read are going to be very different to the standard sort of property people.
Which everyone, everyone. We all try to...
But a lot of them are influenced by my Betfair trading. So, I'll start to pull some out because I know that you're very
definitely
focused. So now this book has got a picture of a cat on it, so it's going to get my attention straight away. But this is a book called Fooled by Randomness by Nassim Taleb.
Nassim, so he wrote a book called The Black Swan.
He did indeed.
Yeah, I've seen Nassim live. I saw him at the LSE. Look, I promised Ryan this would be a 5-minute
It can video. Go as long for me as you need.
But I have to catch a train back to London. But absolutely amazing speaker, Nassim. Have to admit I didn't understand a word he said, but it was one of the funniest lectures I've ever heard at the LSE. But how does it give you value? You must find a gem in him.
Yeah, well, for me, I was trading on Betfair. I still trade on Betfair. That is such a big part of my life that reading books on traders and financial markets and those kind of things and what happens in those markets and how random it is, I understand that, and then I can take those skills into my property world.
As well.
Yeah. It's only been very recently that I've understood that my risk analysis skills from trading and how I can handle markets and how I can handle myself in a trade when money is exposed, how that actually correlates to property. And it was a lady at one of JC's events actually who worked for an investment bank who pointed that out, and I hadn't realised. She said, no, you've got some skill by doing that, and that can move into property.
Look, Ryan's trying to get me to give him more and more time for the summit, and I'd love to give you more and more time, but look, there's the time which Ryan's going to be presenting at the summit, and there's a time when you're going to have a chance to network with Ryan and some of the other key players as well. I know the interview is not just about the books you're reading, but just that Marshmallow Test. It's a fascinating title. Is that another business book? Or?
This is. Okay, so the Marshmallow Test is all about understanding self-control and how to master it. So one of the main things that I have picked up in my trading world is that people don't know how to manage their emotions when money is involved in a trade. It's exactly the same with property. So if you can control your brain, yourself, your emotions, you're going to be a better trader, a better property developer.
So
any of us?
No. Look, that's it for the moment. But Ryan's got me tempted to go and get a few more books post Christmas, and maybe spent a little bit of time over Christmas listening to Audible, but maybe picking up one or two new books as well. So we've looked briefly at your strategies of podcasting, just to go back to the podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of Brad is one name which is recognisable. I recognise Brad straight away because I think it said Tough Mudder.
Yep.
So you can see why branding comes in so quickly. I know Brad's not associated with Tough Mudder. He's not one of their representatives. He's a noted sourcer. Is that the right definition? Yeah. But in terms of where do you see yourself going with both the strategies of podcasting, and how do you balance it with? We just looked at the site today, which was 36,000 square.
Yeah, 34 to 35.
So I'm pushing it. I'm pushing up by.
I wish it was.
By one or 2,000 extra. But how do you balance the time of looking at the sites? And we discussed briefly on Facebook Live in the mini interview about how you source the deal and how you work out the markets and so forth. But about balancing the time of both sourcing and also really doing the podcasting, because it's quite a bit. You're doing podcasting on a regular basis.
Yeah, we get at least hope to get one podcast out a week. It's pivotal to the brand for me, so I have to do that.
Sure,
it's something I've signed up myself to do, and I've agreed that I'm going to do that. But I've got a great team behind me. So you mentioned that site. My involvement in that site now is going to be very minimal, really.
The site in Lincolnshire, just to reaffirm, it's
the wildlife
34,000
square foot, 38 flat bed development. So I'm just going to be managing the project manager on that job now. So that isn't going to be a lot of time per week. And it's like the podcast. So the podcast, I will do the interviews on the podcast and then give it to my VA who does the uploading of the podcast, does the artwork for the podcast and everything else. So it's not actually that much of a time commitment, but it's something that I find pivotal to my brand. And I think the commitment that I show as well. So yes, I am a busy man and I have other things happening with other businesses, but because I'm committed to doing that podcast and I consistently do that, it's that consistent action that people see. So people are going to look at me and say, well, he's consistent all the time. Even though he's busy, he's consistently getting that content out and doing what he says he's going to do. So
are we allowed to say who's coming up next in the podcast?
Yes. So what I do with my podcast is I ask my followers, my audience, what kind of things they want to do, and then I theme them around a month. So this month is all about due diligence and finances. So this month I've got Thomas Escherberg, I hope I've said that right, coming up. I've also got a guy called Manish that, if you don't know, Invest Like a Pro blog is amazing. Manish is incredible.
Yeah, I heard you mention, and Brad mentioned that quite a bit on the
Manish,
podcast.
That's because Manish is a friend of Brad's and he introduced me to Manish, and Manish grilled me on a deal. But I learned more in that 1 hour call with Manish than any potential investor has ever asked me. And I also have the legend that is John Corey coming on the podcast, and also Kevin Wright's podcast will be up.
So how can people find out more about your podcast?
They can go to venturepropertylincoln.co.uk. All of my episodes are there, and then all you need to do for subscribing is on there. You find all of the information. Sure.
So look, some of you are probably wondering how you can find out more about the summit. In case you don't know what the web link is now, it's propertydevelopmentsummit.co.uk, so it's nice and easy to remember. Look, I'd love to be with Ryan a lot longer, And that's the beauty of the summit, because yes, I'm speaking for 40 minutes, but it's a whole day experience. Someone asked me last night, sent me a text, what time does it start? Well, I'll be there very early in the morning before anyone else. I know that for absolute sure. But some people will arrive from 8:30, 9 o'clock. 9:30 is the official kick-off in terms of registration. Look, I have to admit, the last time I left a bit early. When I say early, I think I left about 7 o'clock in the evening, because there's networking at the bar. And just a huge thanks to the sponsors for the summit, Ronald Fletcher Baker, LLP, and Land Insight. Land Insight, by the way, is a product you use. Yeah,
it's a product I use on a pretty much daily basis. Okay. It's one of the key tools that I use.
So you use a number of technology softwares. I see too.
I do.
You love tech. Even when you were paying for the tea just then or drink, it was using Apple Pay. Slack is something which you use as well.
Very passionate about, yes. And
we will hear more about Slack on your podcast as well.
Yeah. And if you want to bring me in this year, I'll do a talk on
definitely.
Slack.
One thing I look at, obviously, or I say obviously, is what are people reading as well. And when you interview people, you learn a lot as well. It's not just about the actual interview; it's the pre-interview, post-interview. But I'm going to say au revoir for the moment, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.